Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video. This is the Mcusta Katana. Very cool little blade. Great either light EDC or gentleman's folder. Really well put together. Really compelling design. This is a knife that I found even people who are not that into knives will look at it and go, hey, that is a really cool blade. Can I, check it out, whatever. I find myself carrying this a lot, on Sundays or, when I'm going out to, some event that's a little nicer. Works really well for that application. So let's get into the video itself and talk about size and weight, which is what we always like to start with. I'm going to move over just a little so you can see the knife better. I do have some other blades here that I want to use for both size comparison and for sort of competitive options, okay? So there's the blade itself. This knife has a 3 1/4 inch blade, 4 1/4 inch handle, so it's 7.5 inches overall, and it weighs in at only 3.4 ounces, so very light, very easy to carry. Very nice for, like as I said, dress pants or something where you're a little concerned that, hey, a big heavy knife is not going to work. I've got a couple of knives for comparison purposes. Here is another sort of Japanese-inspired blade. Zoom out just a little. There we go. The Saw Kiku. You can see they're very close in size. This is the small Kiku, of course. The large Kiku would dwarf this considerably. But there's a similar knife and a similar price point as well. So if you're kind of interested in this, you may be interested in that one as well. I'm not going to do a mini review of each of these, but I'll leave that to for your own efforts. Another knife that's similar, Japanese-inspired design, gentleman's folder, is the Boker Quaken. You can see, of course, the ethnic flavor to both of these blades, sort of that Japanese-inspired stuff. And one more competitive option that's not so ethnic, Japanese, is the Spyderco Native Lightweight. Sorry, for some reason I lost the name for a second there. Anyway, there it is. Similar price point, similar level of quality, similarly comfortable to carry, works well in a lot of different scenarios. But that's those are some size comparisons and some competitive options that I think would be interesting to you. The next thing I want to talk about is the blade, and I have one other knife that's not a competitive option, but will help with the blade discussion. This is the CRKT Otanashi no Ken. Notice the blade shape on this. This is a traditional Japanese tanto blade. This is sort of a modified tanto in the sense that it's not our typical American tanto, which is much more abrupt. It's kind of swept back like we saw in the Otanashi no Ken, but kind of not. It's sort of somewhere in the middle, right? Interesting design choice there. What I find in terms of functionality is that it ends up serving very much like a typical drop point blade. You're either using this part of the blade or this part of the blade, and you don't use this secondary point that often. Just because when you hold the knife, it's not in a position that makes it very accessible. If you notice the angle on the blade, now you're going to be using this portion, not this portion, and in order to get it back to this portion, now your fingers are in the way. So I find that I use this knife just like a drop point. It's as if it's not a tanto at all in terms of the way I employ the blade. Let's get into the rest of the stuff about this blade. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more because there's some cool stuff that I want you to see. Why is my camera not listening? There we go. So you've got a Sanmai-clad VG10 core blade. VG10, of course, takes a great edge, holds that edge well. It's a popular steel and used in a number of different good quality blades. You can see the Mcusta Katana, Seki City, Japan on there, which is kind of neat. And you can see that the Sanmai steel takes on this really cool patina that just makes the knife look really compelling. And that's one of the things that is a major feature of this knife. It's beautiful, it's interesting, it's again, like I've said about other knives, it's a piece of art that also works as a cutting blade. Very nice looking blade, really cool design, and very functional, although, as I said, not so much, I don't find myself using it like it's a tanto blade like my other tanto blades. I find myself using it just like it's a drop point blade. I'm either using the tip or I'm using this straight cutting edge down here, and really don't use this portion of the blade that much unless it's sort of a long slashing type cut, which is pretty rare for most most EDC tasks. All right, so that's the blade. Really cool blade, really well done. Love the look of it, love the usefulness of it. Let's get into now the handle as well as lockup and deployment. So deployment is via thumb studs. It is ambidextrous thumb studs. However, the pocket clip gets a little bit in the way of the left side thumb stud. You can open it left-handed. I'll just demonstrate here for you quickly. You can do it, but you have to come up the knife in this direction, not across the knife, which we sometimes do. A lot of guys, especially if you're wanting to flip it out fast, will come across the handle and deploy that way. Well, on the left side, you cannot do that. The pocket clip is right in the way. Okay, if you deploy it from the bottom like this and push up, works just fine. All right, now add to that a very high level of precision and comfort, and the deployment and lockup is just very good overall. Okay, now the handle is another really interesting feature of this blade. It is anodized aluminum. You can see the cutouts here that are anodized in that bright purple, and then the rest of the blade handle in blue. It is a single stainless steel liner, so it's not a typical liner lock in the sense that these are just scales. In addition to being, you know, scales, these aluminum handles also form part of the structure of the blade. So that's a slight variation, but aluminum is, you know, totally strong enough, especially for this application. And consider there's a lot of hard use knives from like Hogue and Microtech and stuff that are, you know, aluminum handles. So there's no issue with strength there. I want you to notice the attention to detail. That's the next thing I want to point out. Notice how, you know, the cutout here for the pivot, the lanyard hole are all purple anodized. It makes it look really cool, and it's nice to see that level of detail in, you know, a $120 knife, maybe $130 knife. Very nice. It is Torx bit construction, open pillar, and again, single position pocket clip, which may not be, you know, really exciting to a lot of you. However, I'm going to submit this to you as a suggestion. This knife is not designed to be a combat knife. It's not designed to be a hard use knife. This knife is designed as a gentleman's folder. Typically, we're not using our gentleman's folders in such a way that we need really fast access to the blade. It's not a defensive situation. It's not a survival situation. For those types of scenarios, you're likely going to have a different blade in your pocket. Now, one thing I will say about this knife, since we're kind of done, is this knife works great as, it's small enough and light enough to work great as sort of a secondary carry. So often I'll carry this knife. Let's say I'm carrying the Otanashi one day. Well, this is a big blade. You don't always want to get it out in every scenario, but no one's going to bat an eyelash, or most people aren't, over this knife, right? So this makes a great option to carry as either a secondary or a primary blade, and I often do that. And I've said that about a number of different blades. You know, my Native 5, that's one of the things I love about it, to carry it as sort of a secondary blade, and the same is true of this one. I also carry this like on Sundays or when I'm dressed up, and I think I mentioned that already. In terms of my overall impression, this is a great knife. Tons of pride of ownership, tons of wow factor. You know, if you said, hey, what are your, you know, top 10 coolest blades, this would definitely be on the list. There's a lot of cool just style in this knife. Also would work great as a gift. I think anyone is going to appreciate this knife. Even those who maybe aren't that into blades, they're going to look at it and go, hey, that's a cool folding knife, even if don't find folding knives that cool. And of course, finally, if you're a person who always carries, you know, a big, mean, defensive combat folding knife, or even a defensive fixed blade, you could carry this as a secondary blade, and no one's going to bat an eyelash if you take it out to use it in public. Okay, so that's my impression of the Mcusta Katana. Really cool knife. I definitely really like it and would highly recommend it. I haven't heard too much negative, but I would again imagine that, like most knife companies, they're going to have a pretty good warranty program. This thing is solid as a rock. Anyway, there you go. That's my take on the Mcusta Katana. Zoom in one more time to give you a quick look at that blade and kind of ending off the video. Okay, focus, I can't do it. Sorry about that. So there you go, Mcusta Katana. Such a cool blade. There you go, YouTube. I'll talk to you later.